Hello friends, Pastor Jason here. It is Thursday, May 7th, 2020, and today is a National Day of Prayer. And there probably is not a more poignant time for us to be in prayer as a nation, as the people of God, for the circumstances that we find ourselves in with COVID-19 pandemic, with the ever-increasing partisan nature of politicians, with threats towards our economy, our health. We are people who need to cry out in prayer. And I wanted to share something with you that I was reading in the Old Testament this morning. It comes from 2 Chronicles chapter 32. The context of this chapter is Jerusalem is surrounded by the Assyrians. Now, the Assyrians are probably at this time the most brutal nation that has ever walked on the face of the earth. They're the ones that invented crucifixion, and the Romans took it from them and perfected it, but the Assyrians are the ones who invented it. And this army is surrounding Jerusalem, threatening them. In fact, their leader Sennacherib was speaking out in Hebrew to the Jews inside the city, and crying out to them, saying, "You know that none of the gods of any of the other nations were able to save their people. I destroyed them all. No gods can stand up against my power. No gods can stand up against me. And the same is going to be for you. Why are you thinking that anything's going to be different for you?" And the people are freaking out. And then we read in verse 20, it says this: "Then Hezekiah the king and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, prayed because of this and cried out to heaven. And the Lord sent an angel who cut off all the mighty warriors and commanders of the officers of the camp of the king of Assyria. So he returned with shame of face to his own land. And when he came into the house of his God, some of his own sons struck him down there with the sword. So the Lord saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the land of Sennacherib, king of Assyria, and from the land of his enemies, and he provided for them on every side. And many brought gifts to the Lord, to Jerusalem, and precious things to Hezekiah, king of Judah, so that he was exalted in the sight of all nations from that time onward." And I'm just thinking about the state of our country and the state of our nation. And today is a National Day of Prayer again. And what a day to be in prayer, and what a time to be in prayer. There's so many things that we could lift up to the Lord. There's so many things for us to cry out. And I look at this story. I look at the circumstances that the Jews were in 2 Chronicles 32, and it was, like many times in the scriptures, an impossible situation, a situation in which there was no logical or reasonable hope, that there was not going to be any kind of last-minute human intervention that was going to be able to save the people. And yet, the people still cried out to God, and God rescued them. And I just think that with our current situation, circumstances, with so many people who are getting sick, with the state of many of our healthcare workers who are just going crazy right now, with parents trying to figure out how to be homeschool teachers, with politicians who are trying to, some of them I think trying to do the right thing, and others who are seeking their own political gain, with there being an increasing partisan divide in our country. I just think there's no better time to cry out to God and say, "God, heal us, help us, rescue us." Can you hear the friends that live around my house, the chickens? Anyway, I want to invite you to pray today. I want to invite you to pray for our country, pray for the end of this pandemic, that God would supernaturally intercede on our behalf and bring the infection numbers down. I want you to pray for that. I want you to pray for our healthcare workers, and that God would give them energy and wisdom to know how to continue to do their jobs. I want you to pray for our leaders and pray that God would give them wisdom. Pray and ask that God would give them discernment, that God would lead them away from partisanship and lead them into good governing practices. I want you to pray for our church, and not just Redwood Chapel specifically, but the church as a whole in our nation. We as a church I think we're in a very special place where people are asking questions, they're wondering what to do, and we, in the midst of all of this, and we can play a big, important role in answering those questions and pointing them towards Jesus Christ. So it's a good day to pray. It's a good time to pray. And I want to encourage you to do all of those things. And I'm going to close this devotional by praying for our nation and for these things. And God, I thank you so much that you are a God who loves us. You are a God who is near to us. That no matter what our circumstances are, you reign mightily on the throne. And that you heard the prayer of Hezekiah and Isaiah when they were in an impossible situation, when they were surrounded on all fronts. You heard them cry out to you, and you answered their prayer, and you rescued them. And God, we are not in the same circumstance, but in our own. We are surrounded by on many fronts. Where, God, we are powerless to stop a virus. We are subject to our authorities, who many seem to be in it for their own personal gain. God, we are in a state where many of us are not working, or our economy is taking a hit. Where many of our friends who work in healthcare are being overworked. Parents are stressed out over schooling. God, there is so much happening right now. And yet you are near, you are mighty, and you hear us. And so, God, we cry out to you. Would you bring relief into our land? Would you give us resolve and strength in our hearts and our souls to help us to move forward in this season, and not just to survive, but to thrive? God, I pray that you would give us wisdom and to know how to walk in these days, that we would be salt and light to the people around us, that our testimony of how we respond in such a time would point people towards you. God, we need you more than ever, and I pray that as a church, we would demonstrate and put on display your greatness, your goodness, and your mercy. We love you. We give this time to you. Amen. Hey, guess what? We're going to have an opportunity to continue in this on Monday, May 11th. A few months ago, or excuse me, about a year and a half ago, we started having a prayer night once every quarter, and we're going to continue to have that. So on May 11th at 7 p.m., we are going to gather virtually. I know that's not our favorite thing right now, but virtually we are going to gather on Zoom for an all-church prayer night, and there will be an opportunity for us to come together to pray. And so I want to invite you to do that. We'll have the links for that on Sunday or Monday. We'll have the links for that, but it's going to be 7 o'clock on Monday the 11th, and I can't wait to see you there and to be able to pray with you and pray and ask for God's mighty power to continue to shine in our lives. Love you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Look forward to seeing you soon.